I'm just going to do another section on solar PV and heat pumps. So we've seen this kind of pyramid, inverted pyramid before. So we're down onto the energy generation side of things now, which starting with the solar photovoltaics, not to be confused with the kind of other solar, people say solar panels, but you can get hot water, solar thermal, which, as we've already discussed, which I'll come on to, kind of having a solar diverter is probably a much better way of getting solar energy into hot water. So solar PV, believe it or not, first was invented in the 1800s with very poor efficiency. Here's a little timeline of a kind of more recent timeline. About 14% efficient, for those that can't see, about 14% efficient in 1992, coming up to around 22.5% in 2015. There was a big jump around there, 2016. There is a kind of theoretical barrier for solar PV with the standard material, so silicon, which is about 29%. So the way that they've been getting up to 44, 47 is by combining it with other materials, which are very expensive. So most domestic systems we have are around the 15, 20% efficient because they just use the silicon as more widely available, and prices have come down a lot as research has kind of progressed. Yes, as it says here, the cost of installs down about 50% in the last 10 years, will of course continue to drop further. So here's, I mean, there's an example of the kind of older style ones versus some of the newer ones. A little bit sleeker on the bottom right, I would say. But yeah, the panels themselves, the ones on the bottom right are going to be more efficient per panel, probably than those top ones. And with a reduction in cost, there's also been a reduction in subsidies or a drop in subsidies. So there was the feed-in tariff. Some of you may be on a feed-in tariff still. That has finished. So previously that was getting money from the government for installing solar panels, and they'll give you a certain percentage of however much you've exported. Whereas now, I was going to say about the smart export guarantee, but I think that's on another slide. I mean, Matt said earlier, actually, typical 4 kilowatt system with BESAs, they're coming in a bit cheaper than what I put here, so it's always good. Price coming down in real time. But they are produced, around 3,500 kilowatt hours per year on average, depending on orientation and the pitch of the roof, which 3,500 kilowatt hours is about the average household use of a larger household. Of course, you can't use this all at the same time, use all of that energy. So yeah, if you have battery storage, that's one way around it, which I will come on to. But first, considerations for solar PV. You can see this chart. So if you've got a 30 or 40% tilt pitch on your roof and it's perfectly south-facing, that's when you're going to get the most efficiency out of it. Dropping all the way down to, you see here, they're 90% on a west-facing wall. So if you've got just having it on a wall, it's going to be much less efficient than having it on a tilt. And there are certain planning constraints. Yes, flat roof on the top. Flat roof is that top row there, and then wall on that bottom row, like a vertical wall. There are planning constraints as well. So certainly, if you're in a conservation area, then you can only have them, say, on the rear roof that's facing away from the road. Listed building, of course, you need kind of planning consent for everything. But as long as, if you don't live in a conservation area, as long as the solar panels aren't protruding more than 20 centimeters off your roof, then you don't need any planning permission at all. You can kind of crack on from there. And then there's also the roof structure. So is the loft space accessible? Is the inverter going to go in the loft? Are the rafters strong enough? And of course, a solar PV contractor will be able to tell you all of this. They'll do all these checks first, but it's something well worth kind of checking yourself where you can, especially access to the loft. Also, whether maybe if your roof needs replacing soon, you maybe want to do that first rather than having to pay the extra cost of having it all taken off and put back on. There's occupancy and usage considerations as well. Are you going to be working from home all day, using the energy as previously suggested in the day, where you're going to get the most benefit, or are you going to be out? Do you have an electric vehicle that you can charge with it, or do you have a battery as suggested? A side note that I've just thought of as well, that there are with electric vehicles, I don't know how prevalent they are in the UK, but there's bi-directional charging with cars, where you can have cars that can be charged one way, but then you can discharge it back into your property as well. So in essence, that would be like a mobile battery. So that would be an alternative if they start becoming more prevalent to getting just a domestic battery. Although, of course, I'm sure by that point a domestic battery will come down a lot in price anyway. And then, yeah, smart export guarantee tariff. So this is what's taken over the feed-in tariff. It's not paid out by the government. It's paid by the energy supplier that you're with typically. It can range a lot. Some suppliers will offer 3.5 pence per kilowatt hour. And bearing in mind, we're paying 26, 28 pence per kilowatt hour to import it. Others will pay 15 pence, fixed rate. And then others, yeah, again, will have different tariffs where it will change depending on what time you're generating, especially if you're sending energy back into the grid at peak times, 8:30 a.m. or 6 to 6:30 p.m. I've seen ones where they're paying as much as £1.20 per kilowatt hour for you to export into the grid at that point. Not really possible if you don't have a battery, because the sun's not really shining that much at that point anyway. So, batteries. Of course, the increasing trend in domestic batteries with solar, the price has been coming down, and it's made more sense to use your own energy than it is to import it with the increase in energy costs. But it can be quite difficult to figure out what your return on investment will be with batteries. There's, of course, the fact that we don't know what the smart export guarantees would be in some years' time. I think, as Matt was saying as well, that the tariff where you can get cheap energy at night to charge your battery and then discharge it for your own use, or, I don't know, can you discharge it back to the grid at 6:30 when they're paying out, essentially using the battery as a trading system?
Some people do, yeah. Some people do, not to agile.
Yeah, Octopus, I believe, do that, and yeah, so you're in essence just become a freelance energy broker. Yeah, so there's that. That's one way to make money back on it as well. But yeah, these things could change at the drop of a hat. Really depends on what the kind of regulations say and what the market's doing. So it is difficult to work out whether you're going to get your money back from it. If you do get batteries installed alongside your PV, because the PV's renewable energy technology has 0% VAT, and therefore your batteries installed alongside will also have 0 VAT. You get it installed at a later point, providing that the inverter that you had installed alongside it can take batteries, then you do have to pay that 20% on top of it. Has it changed? Oh, well, I'm out of date then. Zero, okay, ignore that last bit. 0% all round. So yeah, and this is kind of what they typically look like. So maximizing the benefit, I've talked a little bit about it already. So using more of it in the day, scheduling things to come on, so your washing machine, any big ticket items really. As mentioned in the previous part of my presentation, anything that's heating. So I think I'll come on to it in a sec. Yeah, if you've got a PV diverter, so solar diverter looks a bit like that. I know it's a bit of a small image. Not dissimilar from that energy monitor. It just kind of clamps onto your export meter. You will still have to have it professionally installed, I believe, because there's a part with the hot water tank that I have to do. But the moment it detects any energy going through to export, because all of your energy is being you're using as much energy as you can in the property, it will then detect that, tell the hot water cylinder to turn on, and then, as someone suggested earlier, it's like a watery battery. It will then heat up the tank when you, rather than having to use it overnight, heat it up overnight on, say, economy 7. It will then turn off, of course, as soon as it registers that there's nothing going through export anymore. It won't keep your hot water tank on. It will just kind of, flick it back off. And yeah, they make sense for some people if you've worked out all the different tariffs that you could have, but they're not just a simple kind of plug and set and forget system for everyone. And also there's the higher cost and potential ecological impact. So I think also Matt alluded to not necessarily recommending batteries for a while. There's the lithium that's got to be mined, and there's the kind of the impact of that. So if you're doing it for carbon reasons, it's, I mean, no worries. I lost my words now. Ecological impact. Yeah, essentially, if you're doing it for carbon reasons, then it might be better just to export the energy back into the grid to help people that don't have renewable generation, so that they can have their energy renewably. Of course, the energy companies, it would be nice if they gave us a high proportion back for what they're charging us to import, but nonetheless, it's still a consideration. I will actually, a note on, I spoke with someone from Australia that was saying about how a lot of people were going off grid with batteries and solar, and obviously lots of sun, lots of people living kind of out in the boonies with no need for being connected to the grid because they've got enough batteries themselves. So they asked to be disconnected from the grid, and they don't have a standing charge anymore, a daily standing charge like we have. If lots of people are doing that, then the grid still costs the same amount to run, and those that are on lower incomes, inner cities, don't own their properties, are footing the bill for those that have disconnected from the grid. So there's an argument for sending the money to the grid, sending the energy to the grid, and not becoming kind of self-reliant or an energy island, as it were, and not leaving people behind, and making it kind of a smarter and fairer system. That's also quite a small thing there, but to just give you an idea of the solar diverter, how that works. But these slides will go along with the video.
That's a good question, and it's probably a very stupid question. But
no stupid questions.
A house's AC current, batteries are DC.
Yes, so that's
So how does my TV, kettle, AC, all my AC stuff, how does that?
Yeah, so that's the inverter. So the part that goes along with the solar panels is it looks a bit like that battery, and that will be changing the DC current into AC for use in the property. No, good question. Yes.
One of the things I found surprising is that when the power went off, there was a power cut externally, the solar panels go off as well, because you can't really just get sported into the grid whilst the power's off.
Yes.
So unless you do something whizzy with it, you can't, have your freezer running when everybody else's power's off, which is a bit irritating.
Yeah, you do, with batteries, you have to have a special setup so that if the power were to go off, so as you were saying, if the power to go off, that your things would carry on going. It's a bit more technical than just having a battery, and as I said, you can't just set and forget. You kind of have to be really dedicated to getting that right. So that's why it's not necessarily for everyone. And yeah, I suppose my point at the bottom, for ecological reasons, instead of getting a battery, getting a heat pump or electric vehicle is probably a better investment, especially if these bi-directional electric vehicles will be coming in more full force. So I'm going to move on to heat pumps next.